It all started with a phone call at 3 a.m. that jolted me awake, a sharp ring that sliced through the silence like a blade. The voice on the other end was frantic, a panicked breath escaping before they even spoke. "He's gone, and they think he did it." My heart dropped, the weight of those words pressing into my chest like a vice. My mind raced, but all I could hear was the sound of my own pulse pounding in my ears. How could this happen? One moment, everything was fine. The next, I was thrust into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. As I sat there in the dark, staring at the shadows in my room, everything about my life shifted. I've always been the quiet one, watching, thinking, staying under the radar. But now, I was caught in the middle of something far bigger than me. Something dangerous. Was this the end of everything I had worked for? Or was it the beginning of something far worse? I tried to remember where things went wrong. The phone call had been just the start. But there was more. The deeper I dug, the more twisted the truth became. And the more people I hurt along the way. But I couldn't stop. No one could see it, not yet, but I knew it was all unraveling, one mistake at a time. What if I couldn't fix it in time? What if it was already too late? You see, when you're caught in a web like this, you don't always get to choose your escape. You have to make decisions in a heartbeat, decisions that could ruin everything. But there's something else. Something I haven't told you yet. A secret so big it changes everything. Would you like to know what it is? Stick around because this story is far from over. The moment the door slammed behind me, I knew things would never be the same. The sudden silence that followed felt suffocating, like a heavy blanket smothering the last remnants of peace I once knew. I had spent years building a life, brick by brick, piece by piece. Yet, in a matter of seconds, it all shattered, as if the foundation I had worked so hard to lay was nothing but a house of cards. The betrayal was like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and dizzy. How could they? How could he? I stumbled into the living room, my hands shaking as I gripped the edges of the coffee table for support. The walls seemed to close in around me, and the weight of my thoughts threatened to crush me. I had trusted him with my heart, with my future. And now, everything was a lie. I could barely breathe, let alone think. The scene replayed in my mind. The confrontation, the cold look in his eyes, the words that had cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a deliberate choice. A choice that destroyed everything I believed in, everything I thought we had built together. And now, as I stood there in the ruins of my life, I had to ask myself, what comes next? How do you rebuild from something like this? Can you even trust your own instincts anymore, after they've led you so terribly astray? But there was one thing I knew for certain. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. No, I was going to fight back. Not just for myself, but for everything I still had left, my dignity, my peace of mind, and whatever was left of the life I had worked so hard to create. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be quick. But I was ready. The first step was confronting the truth. And what I learned along the way would change everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and what it means to truly be free. You may think you know where this story is headed, but trust me, there's a twist you won't see coming. Stick with me, because this journey is just beginning. I had never felt fear like this before. Not the kind that gripped your chest, squeezed your lungs, and made it impossible to think straight. It wasn't the kind of fear you could talk yourself out of or breathe through. This fear was different. It settled in my bones, cold and unshakable. It all started when I received a letter. Simple, innocuous at first glance. But as I read the words, each one felt like a dagger piercing my gut. The weight of it hit me all at once. They were coming for me. I tried to tell myself it was just a mistake. But the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. I had lived a quiet life, kept my head down, played by the rules. I had no enemies, no debts. No reason for anyone to come after me. Or so I thought. The letter didn't lie, though. It was as if my entire world had shifted beneath my feet, and suddenly, nothing made sense anymore. I spent the next few days in a haze, nights awake, eyes darting to every shadow, every passing car, every knock at the door. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. All I could think about was that letter. The threats were clear. If I didn't comply, the consequences would be dire. They knew too much. Much more than I ever expected anyone to know. The thing is, I thought I was safe. I thought I had built walls thick enough to keep me protected, but I was wrong. My past, things I thought I'd left behind, buried deep, had caught up with me. I had no choice but to face the truth. I had made choices once, decisions that felt small at the time, but were now the very things haunting me. And there was no going back. By the time I made the call, my hands were trembling, and my voice felt like it wasn't mine anymore. "What do you want from me?" I asked, hoping they would give me a way out. The voice on the other end laughed, a sound so cold, so final. It sent a chill down my spine. "You already know," they said. "You just don't want to admit it." I didn't know what came next. I only knew one thing for sure. I was in this now. There was no turning back, no escape from the mess I had made. The only thing I could do was face it head on. Would I survive what was coming? I didn't know. But I would fight. I had no choice. It was the kind of morning where everything felt like it was on the verge of breaking. The sun was barely rising, casting a dim orange glow through the blinds, but inside my house, the air was thick with tension. I had always been a patient person, slow to anger, careful with my words. But that morning, everything I had held together for years suddenly felt like it was unraveling. I stood there, staring at the letter in my hands, my mind racing. The words on the page blurred as my hands trembled. This couldn't be real.
It couldn't be, but it was.
The letter was from the bank. A foreclosure notice. The same place where I had put every ounce of trust, every hard-earned dollar, every bit of my security. It didn't make sense. Just 2 weeks ago, I'd paid my mortgage, sent in the check, just like I'd done for years.
But now?
Now, they were telling me I owed more than I could possibly repay. The number on the page didn't just represent a sum of money. It represented everything I had worked for. My home, my peace, my life. I dropped the letter on the kitchen table and paced back and forth, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. Had I missed something? Maybe the payments didn't go through. Maybe I had misunderstood the terms. I grabbed my phone, dialing the number at the bottom of the letter with shaking fingers, praying for some mistake, some sort of explanation. But when the voice on the other end answered, I knew instantly that this wasn't going to be easy. "You've been flagged for a large unpaid balance," the woman said, her voice cold, unfeeling. "Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. You'll need to vacate the property within 30 days. I froze. The world tilted. I was in shock, but there was no time for that. The reality of what was happening sank in like a weight I couldn't carry. My life was falling apart in front of me, and no one seemed to care. How could this happen? How could something so unfair, so brutal, happen to me? It felt like the rug had been ripped out from under me, and I was falling with nothing to hold on to. The truth hit me all at once. This wasn't just about money. This was about trust. It was about the years I had spent thinking I was safe, thinking that I was doing everything right. But now, I had no choice but to fight. Fight for my home. Fight for my future. And I had no idea where this would end, or how far I would have to go to save everything I had built. Would I be strong enough to win this fight? I had to be. There was no turning back. The knock on the door was so loud it startled me, and for a moment, I just stood there, frozen. The quiet of the house seemed to stretch, the seconds dragging by like hours. I wasn't expecting anyone. Not this early, not ever. But there it was again, 2 sharp knocks, demanding attention. I hesitated, my heart thumping loudly in my chest, wondering if I should even open the door. But curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I turned the knob. What I saw on the other side took my breath away. Standing there was a man I didn't recognize, but his eyes, those eyes were familiar. He looked like someone I should have known, someone from my past, someone who had been a part of my life long ago. But I couldn't place him. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, his voice low and tinged with something I couldn't quite read. "But we need to talk." I felt the chill of unease creep down my spine as I opened the door wider. allowing him in. He stepped inside like he belonged there, his presence filling the room with a sense of urgency I couldn't ignore. The tension between us was thick, like something was hanging over us, something unspoken, something dangerous. My pulse quickened, and I tried to keep my voice steady. "Who are you?" He hesitated, taking a deep breath before answering. "I'm here because of the letter." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what he meant. The letter. That letter I'd received the day before. The one that had been so cryptic, so full of threats, so full of mystery. It was the kind of letter that kept you up at night, wondering if your life was about to change forever. The kind of letter you read over and over, trying to find the truth buried in the words. But I hadn't told anyone about it. No one knew about the letter, no one but me. He seemed to read my thoughts. "You're not safe," he said, his voice darkening. "They're watching you. They know everything." My heart skipped a beat. "Who's watching me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The man's eyes flickered, and for a moment, I could see the weight of something terrible in his gaze. "The people you thought you could trust." At that moment, the world seemed to tilt. Nothing felt certain anymore. I had no idea what was coming next, but one thing was clear. This was the beginning of something I could never undo. And I had no choice but to face whatever came next, no matter how dangerous it might be. Would I survive this? I had to. There was no other option. It was supposed to be a normal day. The kind of quiet morning I'd come to cherish in my older years. Coffee brewing, birds singing outside the window, the sun gently peeking through the curtains. But when the phone rang, everything shifted. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, cold, and urgent. "We need to talk about your husband." My stomach dropped, a lump forming in my throat. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the words. What could this person possibly know? My husband, Jacob, had always been steady, reliable, the man I had trusted for decades. What could he have done? The voice didn't give me a chance to ask questions. It just kept talking, telling me things I couldn't comprehend at first. Things about debts, secrets, deals I knew nothing about. Each sentence hit harder than the last, and before I could even wrap my head around what was happening, the line went dead. I stood there, holding the receiver in my shaking hands, wondering if I had imagined it all. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. That evening, when Jacob came home from work, he was different. He seemed distracted, distant, almost as if he were carrying a weight too heavy for his shoulders. We sat down to dinner, just like we always did, but the tension was palpable. He barely spoke, and when he did, his words felt hollow. I couldn't help it. The words escaped before I could stop them. "Is there something you're not telling me?" His face went pale. He stared at me for what felt like forever before letting out a long breath. "I didn't want you to know," he said, his voice shaking. "But it's too late now." Suddenly, everything I thought I knew about our life together was in question. The man I had spent years building a life with, was he hiding something dark? I needed answers, but with every word he said, the stories seemed to get worse, unraveling faster than I could process. Was my whole marriage built on lies? And more importantly, could I ever trust him again? That night, sleep didn't come easily. My mind raced with questions, and I knew that whatever came next would change everything. How far was I willing to go to uncover the truth? Would it cost me everything I had left? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let this go. I had to find out what Jacob had done, no matter what it took. The moment I stepped into the room, the air seemed to freeze. It was as if time had come to a complete halt, and everything around me faded into a blur. The room was empty, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the ticking of the old clock on the wall. But there, on the table, was a letter, a thick envelope, sealed with a heavy wax emblem, something so formal, so final, it sent a shiver down my spine. I hadn't been expecting anything, especially not this. But I knew, deep down, that opening it was the beginning of something I couldn't undo. I sat down, my hands trembling slightly as I picked up the envelope, feeling the weight of it like a burden I wasn't ready for. My fingers traced the wax seal, and without another thought, I broke it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting neat, almost calculated. It didn't take long to read. The words were simple, but they were a punch to the gut. "We know what you did, and we're coming for you." I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the world around me fading into silence. How could they know? Who were these people, and what did they want from me? Panic set in, and I immediately thought of all the things I'd done, all the secrets I'd buried deep in the past. My mind raced, memories flooding back, mistakes I thought I'd left behind, things I thought were long forgotten.
But now they were haunting me.
I had made choices years ago, choices that seemed insignificant at the time.
But now?
Now they were coming back to claim what they were owed. I tried to steady my breath, my pulse racing as I considered the possibilities. What if I had no way out? What if the past I'd tried so hard to escape had finally caught up with me? Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, sharp and loud, echoing in the stillness of the room. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be them? My mind screamed at me to hide, to run, but I knew it was too late for that. Whatever was coming, I couldn't avoid it. And I couldn't help but wonder, would I survive what was about to happen? The thought gnawed at me, but there was only one way to find out. I had to face it. I never expected my life to change so suddenly, so completely. One moment, I was sitting in my favorite chair by the window, sipping coffee and watching the world go by, and the next, the phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm, as if they were reading from a script. "We have your son," the voice said. "And if you want to see him again, you'll follow our instructions to the letter." My heart stopped. My mind spun in 1,000 directions, none of them making sense. My son, my only child, my world, was gone. How had this happened? What was I supposed to do? I barely remember the rest of the conversation. The details blur, the cold calculations of the voice mixing with the frantic pounding of my own heartbeat. They told me to meet them in an isolated spot, alone, without telling anyone, or else I could barely stomach the rest. The thought of losing him was too much. I wanted to scream, to shout for help. But I knew the moment I did, it would be over. They had control. They always had control. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I had to think, clearly. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. But every instinct screamed at me to do something, anything, to fight back. But what if fighting only made things worse? What if I couldn't save him? I knew I had no choice but to follow their demands. The last thing I wanted was to lose him, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized whatever they were asking for, whatever price they were demanding, I would have to pay. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt like I was walking into the unknown. Every step seemed heavy, like I was sinking into the earth with each move. I stood at the designated spot, my breath coming in shallow gasps, waiting for them to arrive. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Could I trust them? Was there any hope of getting my son back? Or was I just walking into a trap from which there was no escape? Then I saw a figure in the distance, and my heart skipped a beat. This was it. The moment that would decide everything. Would I walk away with my son? Or was this the end of everything I held dear? The day I received the news, I thought it was a mistake, a cruel, twisted mistake. The letter arrived, just like any other, tucked into my mailbox, a simple envelope with a logo I didn't recognize. But as I tore it open, the weight of what I read hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart dropped, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. The letter was from the bank, stating that my business account had been frozen due to an outstanding debt I had no memory of, no knowledge of. I read it over and over, each word searing through my mind. How could this happen? I thought.
I've always paid my bills on time.
I've been careful, responsible. And yet, here it was, a nightmare unfolding before me. I thought about calling them right away, demanding answers. But something stopped me. There was a pit in my stomach that I couldn't shake. The last few months had been difficult, sure, but I never thought I was in danger of losing everything. And yet, now, everything I had worked for was at risk. My home, my business, everything I had built, gone in the blink of an eye. As I stood there, staring at the letter, I realized this was no simple mistake. This was deliberate. Someone had orchestrated this, and I needed to know who. But where to even begin? I tried to call the bank, but the wait on the line felt endless. When someone finally picked up, their tone was cold, unfeeling, as if this was just another routine matter for them. "There's nothing we can do," they said, their words like ice. "You need to settle this debt immediately, or your assets will be liquidated." That was it.
No sympathy, no explanation.
Just a cold sentence, one that would unravel everything I had worked so hard to build. I hung up the phone, my mind spinning. I had to figure out what happened, how this all went wrong. But as I did, another thought crept into my mind. What if it wasn't just about the debt? What if there was something darker behind it all? Was someone setting me up? Had I unknowingly crossed someone's path? The more I thought about it, the more uncertain I became. And with that uncertainty came fear. I wasn't just fighting for my business now. I was fighting for my life. Would I ever find the truth before it was too late? Or had I already lost everything? The moment I stepped into the office, everything felt off. The usual hum of the place, the rustle of papers, the chatter of my colleagues, it all seemed distant, muffled. Like I was standing outside of my own life, watching everything happen from a distance. But what I saw next hit me like a punch to the gut. There, on the conference table, sat a stack of papers, neatly arranged, and my name at the top of every page. My resignation papers. And right next to them, a letter from the new CEO, Jason, telling me I was no longer needed. I had been replaced.
Just like that.
Years of hard work, loyalty, dedication, gone in an instant. My heart raced, my palms clammy as I tried to understand what was happening. Jason's son, Mark, the so-called golden boy, had been given my job as the head of marketing. I had always known there was something off about him, but I never imagined it would come to this. It was one thing to be passed over for a promotion, but this was a slap in the face. The betrayal ran deeper than I could even process. I spent the next few hours and a days, my mind spinning with thoughts of how I could fix this, how I could fight back. I'd worked my way up from the bottom, sacrificing everything to build the department, to turn it into what it was today. And now, in one swift motion, it was all being taken from me. But as the hours ticked by, something inside me began to shift. Anger burned in my chest, but it wasn't just anger. It was determination. They had underestimated me. They thought they could push me out without consequences. But they were wrong. I wasn't going to let this go without a fight. I may have been fired, but I was far from finished. What Jason didn't know was that I had something up my sleeve, a project I had been quietly working on for months, something that could change everything for the company. I wasn't just going to walk away. No, I was going to make them regret their decision. They had made a dangerous mistake, and I was about to show them just how badly they had miscalculated. The game had changed, and now it was my turn to play. Would I come out on top, or would I be left to watch as everything crumbled? I was about to find out.